And I want to welcome you to another episode of Beyond the Surface Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Wanda J. Evans-Brewer. The title of this podcast is African Woman, Neither Mule Nor Man. African Woman, Neither Mule Nor Man. So this got inspired by a post, actually, that my husband put up some days ago. And what it had was an African woman. She seemed to be kind of middle-aged. She's not a young woman, but she's not particularly an old woman. And she has this huge pot. And what I mean by huge pot, I'm talking about the type, the size you would see in a witch's brew. If someone was doing some sort of witchcraft, those pots are ginormous. And so he had put a post up and he said, this is how Mama Africa feeds the rest of the continent. So that should give you an idea of how big this pot is. And so she's using all of her muscle and strength to stir this banku. And banku is thick. Like for us, it would be like our grits or oatmeal. So it's thick. And she's over this hot flame and she's outside and she's stirring it and she's using all this muscle and force and it's really amazing watching it with the eye, just her strength and her tenacity doing this. But I looked at it from the perspective as a woman. And I said on his post, I said, who rubs her feet and back after a long day of this? And of course, she will have to do this again tomorrow. Who will invest in her business? And what is her life expectancy? I have so many questions. I respect her, but I also pray her strength in the Lord. She deserves more than adoration. She deserves additional support and relief. And I said, thank you, powerful African woman. If none have told you, I want to. So the truth is, I was disturbed by it. I don't like the image of it at all, because there's this perception that the African woman, the black woman, is somehow a mule, that she's extra strong, that she doesn't cry, she doesn't ache, she doesn't need extra affection, extra TLC, extra tender loving care, that she can take on all this extra work that normally you would associate with a brute, with a mule. And so a woman that I know and respect a lot, she got up there and she put amen. Another woman that I respect a lot, she said, you spot on, Doc. This is a profession of its own. Have mercy. And in fact, that is her profession. If she's out there with a pot that big, with all that equipment and people standing around staring, believe me, she's serving up banku all day. This is what she's doing. This is how she's feeding herself. Okay. And there was an addition to that. Okay. And so my friend, she says, this is Dr. Lassay. She says, my word, this is finesse at its best. This is something I could never do daily. The aches and pains in her body, which have become numb. One thing for sure our people have is that special razzmatazz unlike anyone else. She makes her task look easy and artistic, but I know for a fact a Western could not duplicate her service. Wow, much respect. I wouldn't say we couldn't duplicate it. I would say we don't duplicate it. I'm perfectly sure that if we was put in the same circumstances, that we would have to, for lack of a better way to phrase it, man up. But I responded to her and I said, I completely agree with you with one caveat. I know many Western women that stand on their feet all day, that are forced to multitask, that literally get no time off from being a caretaker/caregiver. So if it's not the same job, but they have to be careful of being viewed the same way. And the way that many of us are viewed is as mules. And women are not mules. Women are not mules and women are not men. They are women. And although they can do some amazing things, what keeps us alive is TLC, is tender, loving care. And the world forgets that. When we were first brought across the transatlantic, one of the things they used to say was that we didn't need a doctor because when we gave birth to our babies, we didn't feel pain. That attitude stuck with white society up into the 60s. They literally didn't believe that the black woman felt pain when she gave birth. There's the famous doctor that spent his time He's considered the doctor of gynecology. And what he did was all of his experiments were on black women with no anesthesia because we were slaves. He was taking slaves and experimenting on them with no anesthesia because, again, a brute, they don't take a mule and give it, anesthetize it in order to do anything with it. In fact, they purposely allow it to feel pain so that they can control it. And so, yeah, we're women. We're not brutes. We're not mules. We're not oxen. But some of these roles that we play in this world, carrying and lifting and dragging along, whether it's literally physically or it's psychologically, the weight that we're carrying, we have to be careful with. And there's an expectation that we will handle it, that we can handle it. Well, here's the truth. The biggest killer of the black woman in the U.S. is heart attacks. We are the biggest for heart attacks. That's not by accident. It's by life. We're always doing too much. We always have a burden that's too big. That we're managing far too much. We're trying to multitask far too much, and we still get a mommy tax. We still get a penalty. So yes, you can have the business career and you can travel and do all this stuff, but it doesn't give up your responsibilities for cooking and cleaning and seeing about the home. Where if you're just a man, most men can pay someone to do it, and they go off into the business world or into the academic world without those worries. And there's no expectation. You don't think, well, if this guy is running a Fortune 500 company, you don't expect him to come home and wash dishes. You don't expect him to show up at his kid's school and find out how he's doing academically. You don't expect him to stop by and check on mom and go to Walgreens and pick up something, her medication for her. You expect all that stuff to fall on the wife. We're neither mules. We're neither men. We're wonderfully made, and we're women. And we have to be careful. I didn't understand why he celebrated that. I said, okay, that's cool. Of all the things to celebrate, what was in his mind? Even posted it, and I told him when he came home. I said, I didn't like your post. Your post concerned me. It was celebrating, sending out a message of celebrating in a way that I want you to be careful with. I want you to love her. I don't want you to stand in adoration. I don't want you to be an onlooker looking at what she can do and giving her applause and bringing more people to look at her as if she's somehow on display. I want you to love her and say, hey, she's feeding all them. Next time we want to get her some equipment where she don't have to do it that way. Where like she can sell this Banku. Maybe it's a machine that mixes it, or maybe she can have a crew where she can split up them pots. But it should never fall on one person where she has to come up with this amazing technique. And I'm going to close out with this. It reminded me so much of the story that we grew up reading, John Henry. And John Henry is sort of folklore, but also true. So he was big and strong, and he could really work that hammer at chiseling through concrete in order to make a way for the trains. And they told John Henry that they had new machinery that could do it, that they wouldn't need manpower anymore. And John Henry wanted to prove to the whites that, no, I can still do it. We can still do it this way. You don't need the machinery. We're efficient enough. And so it was John Henry against the machine. And he hammered and plowed and hammered and hammered and hammered against the machine. And he won. He did beat the machine. But at the end of it, he drops dead. John Henry dies. So, on one hand, it's triumphant. On the other hand, it's traumatic. And that seems to be a lot of the African woman / black woman story. Like, yes, we're carrying baskets and burden and all this stuff. But a lot of times, we're not even able to sit back at some point and relax and enjoy it, the fruits of our own labor, because we're leaving this world as brutes, as mules, and being compared to men instead of leaving here the way we were designed as women. You've been listening to Beyond the Surface Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Wanda J. Evans-Brewer. And until we meet again, Be safe in God's grace.